hear me and I can hear you, correct?
Perfect. All
All right,
good. We're all good. Yeah.
all right, great. Well, I just want to say hello to everyone. It's me, Stephanie Nietzsche, and I am here today with Dr. Joyce Mikal-Flynn, author of Anatomy of a Survivor. How are you?
I'm doing great. I really am. I'm doing great. I'm also I'm a professor at Sacramento State University, and I am on a sabbatical further studying issues around surviving well. So I'm really excited about that. So yeah, it's a great semester to look forward to.
Yes, you definitely have a lot of things going on.
Mhm.
So give us a little, let us know how life was. I definitely want to discuss what happened.
Yeah.
You had a life-changing event. I've been
Mhm.
waiting to talk to you because it's just incredibly interesting and it's something that affects everyone. But luckily, CPR saved your life. But tell us about life before the
Oh,
event.
that's good. So that's a great question. And that's actually when I was doing my initial doctoral research, my dissertation chair made sure that I asked the people who I was interviewing who had major life events, not just about the event and what happened in life after, but life before. So I love that. So life before that, I grew up in a family. There were 6 siblings. Nice. Love my mom and my dad. And one of the things I think is most important is my parents were very loving people, but they did allow us to struggle. And by that, I mean, they didn't fix things for us.
Mhm.
They helped guide us in so many ways. I look back, even at my age, my parents have both passed, but things that they said to me, little caveats that they passed on that I'm still passing on to my children were very helpful. So I was the second of 6. I was the oldest girl. So I was really one of the people that kind of took stuff on. I really
Right.
took life on. I took on a lot of responsibility. I put a lot of responsibility on myself. I think my mom especially tried to move me back a little bit from that, but that's kind of my mindset. And I was also from very early on, very into, I didn't like the word no or couldn't do. I just thought, well, that doesn't make any sense because other people are doing this, so it must be able to be happening. And again, my parents were not financially very secure and helpful, but what they gave me was much richer. And that was the notion of you got to go for this and you have to
Yes.
do this and follow through. So I think in terms of my background, that's it. That kind of came to be. I have some degrees. Got an undergraduate degree from University of San Francisco. I have a Bachelor of Science in Nursing. And University of San Francisco is a Jesuit college. And of course, I didn't go to college to earn money. You go to be of service. And I was also very interested in the Kennedys and the level of service that they looked at, and they started the Peace Corps. Well, I didn't do the Peace Corps. I joined VISTA, which is Volunteers in Service to America. And I went and worked as a public health nurse at a migrant and seasonal farm worker clinic up in the state of Washington. And it was during that time that I saw a role of a nurse practitioner. And I went, wow, that's awesome. I want to do
That's for
that.
me.
Came to Sacramento to go to UC Davis to study and become a nurse practitioner, which I did. And that's been the majority of my clinical practice has been as a family practice nurse practitioner. While I was studying here in Sacramento, I met and married my husband. We've been married for 41 years and we have 3 children.
That's fantastic.
And so, yeah, I mean, and I worked part-time. I found both of us working full-time was just crazy making. And so we made a decision that he would work full-time and I would work part-time, and that worked out well. And I also, because I wanted to not smoke cigarettes anymore, and I wanted to lose weight and I wanted to get in health, I started running a long time ago. And it was, and I really got into it. And that was a mental health thing for me, especially as we started having kids. I can just remember my husband walking up to our house, after work. And just before I put dinner on the table, I would go out for a half-hour run or so, and I would come back like as a different person. So I was very into and very involved in running, got into doing marathoning, got into doing triathloning, and just really enjoyed that and loved that. And that kind of brings us to, I also wanted my children to be involved in athletic events, and they were on a swim team. And we happened to be at a championship swim meet. And I don't have any memory of this event at all, and probably for a couple of weeks after, I don't remember anything. But our son wasn't quite 2 at the time, he was almost 2, and our daughters were 7 and 8. And we were at a championship swim meet, and it was a 3-day affair. And during Sunday, the last day of the championship, they had a fun adult relay. Well, I'm very competitive, and I'd been doing a lot of training. And so I grabbed my husband and a couple of friends and said, come on, we're going to swim this, and we're going to win this, and I'm going to swim last because I'm the fastest. Now, this is all what people have told me, I said, and I happened to swim the last leg of the relay that finished at the side of the pool that was 13 feet deep. And I finished, and I just sunk to the bottom. And the timer said to my husband, I think is your wife okay? And he goes, oh yeah, sometimes when you swim, you kind of go to the bottom and you kind of just jump back up. Well, I wasn't jumping back up. So my husband dove to the bottom of the pool, brought me to the side. And very luckily, since there were a lot of children there were a lot of parents there. And some of them were emergency room physicians and a cardiac nurse specialist and whatever. So I did get very good CPR at poolside that lasted a little over 20 minutes. They landed a helicopter in a field close to where I was at, and I got on the helicopter, and I was told that my heart stopped again on the helicopter. They got it going, and that's when I ended up at University of California Trauma Center. And that's when the life I knew changed drastically.
But you know what I find so interesting? You were conscious while you were swimming and a little before that, but you don't remember, you lost time, you lost memory.
Oh, totally.
Prior to the event, while everything was seemingly fine.
Yeah, totally. No, I was always, no, and I don't really remember those are just things that people told me.
Yes, that people told you.
Yeah.
But that was why you don't remember swimming.
No.
You don't remember saying, I'm going to win this thing. You don't remember.
No, people told me that. There were so many things that people told me after I got, out of ICU. I was on a respirator, obviously, for a while, and then got off the respirator and out of ICU. And the very first thing, I was actually transferred to another hospital. And the very first thing I remember is sitting up in my bed. It's the craziest thing, sitting up in my bed. And at the end of my bed, my brother and sister-in-law were there. And I just remember saying to them, where am I? And they said, oh, you're in the hospital, which of course I was told. I asked this a bazillion times. You're in the hospital. And well, what happened? Well, you had this death event, but you came back and now you're here. And by that time, I didn't have any IVs and nothing was there. And I used to work in a medical intensive care, and we would go to every code in the hospital. So I was very familiar with all that went on with the code. And I remember pulling my shirt forward, and I didn't see any burns on my chest, and I didn't see any IVs or marks. And I said, no, that couldn't have happened. And they said, yeah, it did. But can we get you anything? And my very favorite meal is a cheeseburger, French fries, and vanilla shake. It's my favorite meal. And I said, yes, I am starving. Can you get me, those things that have layers on them, and there's some yellow stuff on them, and and you can drive through places and get them. And they come with these long things that you put salt on, and they're hot. And then there's this thing that comes in a cup, and it's white and it's cold. And that's when I recognized and started to recognize some of the effects that the extended CPR had taken on me. And that was one
Wow.
of the biggest problems that I had noticed, was severe aphasia, that I just trying to capture words so I could articulate, but I just couldn't. I remember one time my husband asked me, can I get you something? And I said, yes. And I could actually see an orange in my consciousness, that I said, I want one of those things, they're round and you peel them and they have vitamin C in them. And you just, and I could talk around it, but I just couldn't say it. So that was one of the things that was extremely challenging for me,
Did
as
that,
well
up-
as as well as
I'm
some other
sorry.
emotional things.
Did that upset you when you woke up in the hospital and you saw your family and you were trying to describe what you wanted, but you couldn't find the words? Did that upset you, or were you just okay with that because you just wanted what you wanted at that time, and you didn't even realize that you couldn't find the word to say cheeseburger or fries?
Yeah.
How was that moment?
Well, at that moment, I wasn't upset. I really wasn't, because I just was like, had come out of this other
A little
space. And so,
disoriented.
yeah, yeah. And so it didn't strike me as being problematic until time went on. And I started really recognizing I'm I'm messed up. I really started realizing as I started to go out, and, some emotional issues associated with that, and not being able to capture words, and being told I wasn't going to run anymore, and being told I wasn't going to swim anymore. And when that just started adding up. And that's when I went into a pretty deep, dark space of, wait a second, this isn't supposed to happen to me. Why is this happening to me? This isn't supposed to. And just kind of starting to work out of that, and just really realizing I was so exhausted all the time. And all the things I used to do like that, like, just came so easy to me. The
Mm,
running, the thinking, the organizing my family, the multitasking, I couldn't do any of that.
how
I,
about
I I just, I couldn't remember anything from here, there, or whatever.
how
Yeah,
about
it
your
was really tough.
reflexes? Did it affect your reflexes also?
No, physically, I actually was good. I think because I remember one of the docs who resuscitated me said, it's because you were in such great shape before this happened, and you were young, that you
Wow.
were able to get through all this. But physically, I could do all sorts of things. Of course, I was really afraid that it would happen again because of the cardiac thing. They couldn't really figure out exactly what prompted this cardiac event. It could have been a respiratory thing. It could have been shallow water drowning. There was just a lot of things going on. But that was the other thing that was very unsettling as well, is there was no specific diagnosis or answer. This is what happened to you. This is what we're going to do. It was more, we think this is what happened. We want to put an implantable defibrillator, which I did not want to do at all. And then they did some other things. But yeah, so it was a pretty tough time for myself, for my kids, for my husband.
I could imagine. I mean, and you realize how fragile life is,
Oh yeah.
especially when they didn't know why this happened. So
Hmm.
it makes you feel like, wow, this could happen at any moment.
Hmm.
And when it was fresh, were there moments
Hmm.
that you had maybe like little twinges or little pains, and you said to yourself, oh my gosh, something's going to happen? I mean, it could have been something as simple as, you know, I don't know, gas or something. You know how we get sometimes in the chest,
Oh yeah,
we
yeah,
get
yeah.
feelings when we eat certain things. So would you sometimes feel something and say, like, brace yourself and go, oh my gosh, what's happening here? Did you get nervous and worried
No,
after the
I
event?
didn't really get, because I had no symptoms before, and I really didn't have any symptoms after. I mean, it's been over 30 years and I still haven't had any symptoms after. This was like this independent thing. The thing that would worry me more than anything is just the notion that something so obscure, how could that happen to me at 35 years old? I just would never imagine that that could happen. And so your reliance on yourself physically, emotionally, and mentally was sort of like, well, wait a second, I had done everything right, and yet this happened. And so my anxiety was around, well, what if this happened again?
Wow.
And what if I died and don't come back? And that was with me for a while. Not it went away eventually, but it was with me for a while, for sure.
Did you have maybe dreams about what happened or what could have happened since you don't remember the actual events?
No, not, no, not really. I've had some really incredible dreams, but not necessarily about that
About that.
situation.
So your
Mhm.
dreams changed
Oh yeah, yeah,
since
yeah.
the event. Maybe are they more vivid or
Mhm.
wild?
They're more vivid, and they get more like, it's almost like you get sort of messages from, kind of things. You just learn lessons through when one of the things that I teach at Sac State is a beginning course in neuroscience. And you begin to really realize what your brain needs, does, and what it can do. And when you are in a deep sleep, your brain works out a whole bunch of stuff, and you learn a lot of things. And I have learned to keep a pad and pencil by my bed, because things will come to me in a
Oh,
dream, ideas, thoughts, things I'd been working through. So I kept the pad and pencil by my bed. So I wake up and I'm able to at least write out some bullet points so I don't forget about it.
and you got it down. And how's your memory since the
Good.
event?
Yeah. Well, I remember a lot of things before, and I remember some things after, but there is clearly a 3 to 4 week period of time where I have zero memory.
When you don't
Zero.
remember?
I
How long
don't
were
care.
you in the hospital?
I was in the hospital. I believe I was in the hospital like a week in ICU, then a step down unit for a few days, probably 3 weeks, 3 to 4 weeks. Yeah.
Mm, wow. I know we have a couple of people joining us right now, so I just want to say hello. We have Lisa Wetzel. She said, I made it. Yes, she did tell me she wanted to be here today. Thank you,
Oh,
Lisa. We
fantastic.
have Josephine. Josephine also said hello, made it. Thank you for joining us. Lisa said a lot of people say they watched it like out of body. And Lisa is an ICU nurse,
Ah,
by the way.
ah,
Yeah. So I have heard about those out of body experiences while people are being worked on.
right,
And they
right, right,
say
right.
that they met someone like maybe, a deceased relative and they watched together, they talked together, but you didn't have any of that, correct?
No, if I did, I don't remember it. And it's really, and I know that happens, and I heard about it, and I've had people talk to me about it. Um, and as I've thought through this, in in many regards, I'm kind of glad I don't remember that. I think something like that probably happened. I just don't remember it. And the reason I'm glad that I don't remember it is because I think it might have distracted me from the work I'm doing now, because the work I'm doing now has so much to do with, the aftermath of trauma, and, how to um, unearth and understand your strength and your resilience and your capacity for growth in the aftermath of that. And I think it might have distracted me from doing what I'm doing now. But I
Mm,
believe in it, and I've heard about it, and I've heard people tell me about it. So,
yes. So what you've been through and the work that you do and the research that you do and everything
mm,
involved, you are talking with people that have had these events. So I imagine there's a variety of stories. Everyone has a
mhm,
different experience when they
right,
come back.
right, right,
And
right.
do you notice a lot of people, have you heard a lot of people like you do not remember
Yeah,
what
I
went
think,
on?
but so when I talk to people, I don't just talk to people who actually, maybe have had a death event and have come back. But those people that I do talk to have had that event, there is a somewhat of a loss of memory, and maybe in some ways that's a good thing, because it's a painful time. It's a painful time. And so
Sure.
your brain maybe protects you around that. But I'm a generalist in trauma. So I have had fabulous interactions with easily hundreds of people who have gone through a variety of things from, cancer to spinal cord injury to addictions to, you know, uh, all sorts of veterans, first responders, all sorts of events.
Right.
And I do have to say that there is definitely a uniqueness to each of these events, whether it's a death event or spinal cord injury or cancer, whatever you're dealing with. But I also have seen a definite clarity of thought with people who have moved through in a productive way. And you see some consistencies in how they managed the situation and then moved on and then grew.
That's fabulous. Because I know when I read your bio, there was some mention of depression.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
So, I
Oh yeah.
mean, that is normal, correct? When you survive or go through a traumatic event, depression usually sets in once you realize, I guess, what happened.
Yeah, because your life changed. And so I'm glad you brought that up. And let me just say, I've gotten very into words. Like words are really important in finding the right word. And as you described, depression is normal. I like to shift it and I say to people, I expect you to be depressed.
Mm,
I expect that. And the reason I like to use that is to almost a comforting thing, because I say it is not an end point. It is what happened is a beginning point to a new life. And you have to grieve and be depressed. It's expected to do that in order to effectively move through stages and progress forward.
mm,
You have that's part of the process. And that's why I also like to say, when I talk about recovery and rehab and, what I created, the word metahab, I look at that and I recognize that. I tell them that it is a process, and part of the process is letting go, using the frustrations and the anxiety and those types of things to move forward. But it is not, you are not a crazy person. This is
mm.
not a psychiatric disorder. This is part of the process when life upended you. Either you chose it or life chose it for you, and now you have to work through it. And part of the work
Mm.
through is dealing with depression and grief.
And how important is it to speak to and be around other people that have been through traumatic events? Because when you tell someone that hasn't experienced something similar to what maybe you experienced or someone else experienced, I think it's really hard to understand or grasp sometimes what that person is going through. How do you understand something like that? So that's when I imagine groups help and, maybe therapy,
Oh yeah.
counseling.
Yeah. I got therapy. I always say to people, that is not that is part of the process. I do suggest to people when they pick a therapist or a counselor that you pick the right one, because you want to have one who is not going to keep, and we know this now, keep bringing you back to the trauma, because that's not really
Oh,
helpful. So you want to have
wow.
somebody that's helping you move to
Move
recognize
forward.
it, and you're not dismissing it, but you're recognizing that that is a point in time, and helping you move forward. The other thing too is I do a lot of group work. And one of the things that when people enter the group work I do, and again, it can be a variety of different experiences. We MetaHab and the group work I do is very strength-based, positive psychology, building on what you can do, what you want to do, how to get there. Again, we are not minimizing or trivializing what has happened, but there is a point in time where people can and must move ahead and use what they have gone through to motivate them and to strengthen them as they move forward in their life.
Yes, I could see that. That makes so much sense. I'm so glad you said that. We have to move forward and we cannot be stuck. We have to move ahead because life keeps on moving,
Mhm.
right? And doesn't
Because
serve a purpose.
you can do that. And that's the point, you can do that. We have the capacity to do that. And again, I always like to honor what has happened to people because think about that for sure. But the focus we want to make is how we are progressing. It's always about, the progression and what do we need to do to help support people in that progression forward.
Yes.
Yeah, it's important.
So is this how you decided to write a book? By helping people and letting people know that they have to, they should move on and it's part of recovery, moving on, not being stuck in that event?
Yeah, so great question. Thank you. This is my second book on this subject. I have a first book called Turning Tragedy into Triumph, and that is based on stories that I took from my dissertation and then developed the metahabilitation clinical pathway that guides people forward. The reason for
Ah,
this book is my first book I wrote over a decade ago. And in that decade plus years, I have done so much research and discovered so much with regard to the neurobiology of gratitude and resilience. I've learned so much about genetics and epigenetics, and as it applies to that, there's so much science that I have been able to incorporate. So this book to me was very necessary, again, during this time, this unique time in history, that people need a breath of fresh air, a way up, a way out. So that's
mm,
what the really prompted that, but also it was prompted to incorporate all the research that I now have that says this is not just a good idea. This can happen. There are reasons when you actively engage in your experience to move in a productive way, things are changed even at a cellular level. And I needed to know and understand that. And when I did, I needed to enhance my prior work and bring that forward. So that's Anatomy of a Survivor is really about what are the pieces that are put together to build this survivor? And that's what the book shows.
okay. So now, how long after the event did you write your first book? How long
Uh,
did,
oh gosh, I'm trying to think. So it's in 1990 to about 15 years.
did you give it a lot of thought beforehand? Like, did you have the urge to write the book, but then maybe said, oh, you know what, I can't do this right now, or it's just not the right time for me? Or did you just go full speed ahead and say, I'm going to, just like you said, I'm going to win this race. I'm
Yeah.
going to, when you were swimming, did you do that with the book too? I'm going to write this
No,
book.
yeah, no, it was funny. It's so funny when you say that because they're kind of funny story around my first book. But when I came back and went after my event and went back to, because I got my master's and my doctorate after my event, those things happened afterwards. So when I got my master's and so I decided, I really wanted to make sure I had the time to be with my family and raise my children. So
Mm,
I was working part-time and raising children and doing all sorts of other fun stuff. So it's when I decided I had seen patients, movies, books I read or whatever, and I saw people who did, who suffered, but really not only survived, but actually thrived in the aftermath of a trauma, and not in spite of it, but as a direct result. And I was fascinated by that. So when my children got older and two were already out of college, one was going into college, I decided to go back and get my doctorate to study this. So there was a space and time where I just said, I want to get my life and get to pay attention to my life, to my family, to what I was doing. And then when they were kind of off on their own, I went back and got my doctorate. So when I did my doctoral research, it was really all about finding this pathway, understanding how people, not only why people move forward, but how do they accomplish that. So I have a very good friend and colleague, and her name is Dr. Bridget Parsh. And she's really, there's just a lot of things I accomplished because of her. And I remember after I finished my doctorate and I put this doctoral research together, she said, we were colleagues at Sac State. And she said, well, you need to write a book. And I said, yeah, I'll do that. And is that book written? And yeah, I'm going to do that. Is that book written? And she just would bug me about it for like weeks, months. And finally, one day she goes, did you write that book? And I said, Bridget, I don't know if I got it in me. I don't know if I'm smart enough. I don't know if I can do this. I don't know if it's good enough. I was going through all this like, I don't know if I can do this. And she looked at me and she said, first of all, you found out something people need to know. People need to know what you found out. Secondly, you're completely annoying. I'm really annoyed with you because you are smart enough and you can do that. Now get down and get that book written. And she really pushed me to do that. And so that's how the first book came about, was really being prompted. And I'm so glad that I listened to her, because the other thing she would say is, the difference between people who are successful and people who aren't? And what? Follow through. Yes. Follow through. So you want to write that book, you follow through and you get it done. And it was, it's not easy. It's not always fun, but it is always a worthy task. And I feel so happy I have that out there for people to use. And then I'm so proud of this second book I wrote, because it just really fills in the blanks between why it's a good idea to have gratitude, why it's a good idea as parents to organize your behavior around overcoming adversity and challenges. This changes things on a cellular level and changes not only you, but your children and your children's children. It moves down that way. So it's super important to do that. I wanted to include all that in my book, and really in my book also, the one part of it completely structures out for you, completely provides a roadmap of how to use the MetaHab system and how to work through challenges, adversities, and even trauma for people who have gone through it, or people, family, friends, clinicians, all, the whole gamut.
That's so interesting. And, thank heavens for people like you that write books and share what happened in their lives, because so many people have events happen and they have no one to talk to, or they don't know what to do, or they're embarrassed or ashamed to share how they feel. So, for you to come on and do interviews and speak about what happened and write a book, it is so important. So thank goodness you did that. And thank goodness your friend pushed you to do that. Dr. Bridget Parsh, right?
Yeah.
So thank you, Bridget, because this is, information that people really, really need to know. And what is the most common misconception about trauma recovery, would you say?
That you need to be you need to identify yourself as this uber strong person who has been through a bunch of stuff and you can get through that. That's a misconception. First of all, the misconception is that, we kind of sometimes want to move away from it, and you must move into it. You must move into it. And I'll use an example of, like, I use, like if you want to get stronger biceps, you can't sit around hoping your biceps are going to get stronger. You must get engaged. So it's in the engagement with it. And the other thing too, is that people, well, I don't know if I could do that. And what if I went through that? And anything go, these events allow you to recognize just how strong you are. because we are born with an amazing capacity on all levels, emotional, physical, intellectual levels, to adapt, adjust, work with issues that, work with trauma. And we have systems that are capable of integrating that trauma and coming out better. So let's just use your immune system. Well, your immune system, we have an amazing immune system. If we didn't have an immune system that could handle all sorts of weird stuff, we would never get to a year old, right? So your immune system, though, is at its best when it's engaged. So it doesn't just sit around saying, hey, I'm going to come up with an antibody for that virus. No. It has to get hit up against. And it's sometimes when it gets hit up against, it's like, oh, shoot, I don't recognize this. I don't know what to do with this. And then it mounts a response. But then once it mounts a good response, the next time it gets hit up against, I got this. That's my favorite line. I tell my people all the time, you got this. Like, you got this.
Yes. It's a protection, right? A barrier.
And we have all sorts of layers of that protection in our systems that are able to do that. So no, you don't have to be some big, bad, strong person. You have that yourself. And I love it when people go through things and go, wow, I actually didn't think I could handle that. And look what I did. I go, see, look at what you got. Yeah.
I mean, those events are incredibly stressful whenever we go through anything that we don't want to happen or when it's unexpected. And sometimes I feel we want to just forget about it and we don't want to address it. And we don't want to, we just want to say, you know what, I just want to put that in the past. So do you feel for some people that might be good, or do you feel everyone should really just say, hey, this is what happened and take time to process it? Or is each person different?
Well, kind of yes to all of what you just said. But
Okay.
I will say this. I will say this when people ask me that. I say, look, there's no like just completely getting over this or forgetting this. And sometimes you don't necessarily always want to do that because it brings meaning. These events can bring profound meaning into your life. So I say, you don't like get over anything. What you do is you use it. You use it. You use it to inform you to become a more compassionate person. You use it to unfold and unearth your strengths, your resilience, your ability to see things differently, to engage your growth mindset. So sometimes, it's okay to go back and remember, because also it helps you remember how far you've come.
That's a very good point. Yes.
How far you've come with this. And I can this is decades ago since my thing, but I'll talk to people about it. And I still get very emotional. I still can get very emotional about what that time is, because I do remember how tough that was. And, that you're crawling out of a pretty deep ditch and you're not sure what's going to happen. So you remember that. But then the thing that I also like to remember are the people who guided me, the people who pushed me, the people who believed in me, the people who said, why aren't you going to do that? So, the people who I trusted in giving me good advice. And that's another thing I always like to tell people. When you are around people who you trust and they tell you to do things, do it. Because people who have done well have learned how to, and this is a big thing for me, learned how to ask for and accept help.
Yes.
Because you know the big stuff, the challenges and some adversities, a lot of that you can kind of get through on your own with some help with your friends and whatever. But the big stuff, you're not getting through that on your own. It's foolish, it's not productive, and it
Mm,
doesn't work very well to try and just that I'll do this, I got this.
right.
No, I kind of need some help here, I think.
Yeah. I think that it could prolong also what's
Mhm,
happening emotionally and physically. Is that
mhm,
true? Do you find that to
mhm.
be true too? It just drags it out even longer. If we
Yeah,
just
you know,
bottle it up maybe and say,
and
we're
it
gonna do
doesn't
this.
that help, but it also doesn't bring the insights. You know, it
Mm,
doesn't bring the acknowledgement, and it doesn't, what happens with a lot of these situations is, you know, your relationships can be so much stronger, so much more profound. It doesn't allow that to occur. It doesn't allow, again, the idea of you to recognize things internally. It doesn't allow you to build a spiritual, you know, all those things. So trying to do this. The other thing I do tell people, and this is a huge red flag for me, and I learned about this by the readings that I've done, the research that I've done, and dealing with people, is you have to be careful too about isolating. Now,
mm,
not everybody that you need some time off on your own. You need your time, some time to figure stuff out. But if you see people checking out, you know, not going to school, not going to church, not going to family functions, not going to run with their friends, not like they're checking out, that is a huge red flag and needs to be addressed. Not everybody who does that is going to do harm to themselves or somebody else, but many people who have done self-harm or have hurt other people, isolation is a part of that. It's kind of a dangerous place to be. So I always recommend to people to monitor themselves and other people they care about around that.
right. And what do you think for yourself personally was the biggest struggle during your own recovery? Anything, any hard challenges?
Oh
Any,
yeah. The fear that I'm never going to get through this, that this is I'm never going to get over this, that I'm never going to get my life back again, that I'm never going to get, you know, just the fear and, you know, the anger, which of course is just masked fear, but the anger of how did this happen? Why did this happen? I can't believe this happened. And then the fear of what is my life going to be like? So that was a big struggle to the point, and people can identify. I mean, I even, you know, had a moment of idea of suicide because it's just so hard to come back. It's such a struggle when, again, you're so used to having things be so easy, and
right, right.
everything was a struggle for a while, and it was tough. So, yeah.
Yeah. And do you feel that since you don't remember a lot of what happened with the situation, that that also could be a problem to, recover, like during recovery? Like, I mean, you know what happened because people told you what happened. And then, of
Mhm.
course, you face, the post, you know, effects of what happened to you. But when you don't remember what you went through at the moment, it, does it kind of hinder, you know what I mean? Does it stop, like, how do you address that when you don't, something happened to you and you
Right,
have plenty of
right,
witnesses and you were in the hospital and
right,
you know
right,
what happened,
right,
but
right.
you weren't present for it. You were physically, but you don't remember what happened. So,
Yeah.
like, what does that feel like? Like, you know what I mean? You had
Yes.
you actually saw it. Well, you didn't see it because you don't remember, but you died for
Yeah.
22 minutes, and you have no memory of what happened before and what happened after.
Yeah.
It amazes me, and it's so interesting. And it's part of life. I mean, because we
Right.
die.
Right.
But some people come back, and I don't know. Like, what do you think about that? Like, as far as recovery when you don't remember.
Yeah, that I dealt a little bit with in therapy.
Okay, okay.
Because there is this unknown, for sure. And again, there's this fear of, well, what if this happens again and I don't come out, whatever. So there's definitely there. um and but I think for what I've organized my thinking around for the future kind of thing is, I've kind of thought, well, what can I control? You know,
Mm,
what can I do something about? And if I can't really do anything about that, then I have to recognize that, there are some things in life that are going to be an enigma, and I might not realize what it all meant and what it all was about until I do die and stay dead next time. And
yeah.
I guess I just have looked at it as something that I just haven't wanted to spend time or thought about to go back and do, as being something that was essential to my progress. That may differ.
Okay.
Some people may need to do that, and that may be important. But for me, I don't know why. Maybe it was the way I grew up, but like, okay, that happened. Now you know, in fact,
Fascinating.
people make jokes with me sometimes because they go, well, how'd you get into that? And I said, oh, well, I had this sudden death event and I survived it, and I went through this and I went through this, and now I'm doing this. And they go, whoa, wait a second. What do you mean you had that? But one of the things that I've also noted, and very interesting when you do research, you can go in there looking for one thing and other things bubble up. You go, wow, I never saw that coming. And when I did my initial research, I interviewed 6 people who had gone through significant traumatic events, from a
Mm,
gentleman who was in a concentration camp to a young man who had spinal cord injury, and a young woman who had breast cancer. And so really significant stuff. So when I was finishing and I wrote the book, and I used their stories in my first book. I use other stories in my second book, but I used their first stories in my first book. And so I gave it to beta readers and said, well, what did you like about the book? And they said, well, we want to see pictures, and we want to know where the people that you initially interviewed, where are they now? And to each person I interviewed, when I re-interviewed them to kind of catch up for the book, because the book came out a couple of years after I initially interviewed them, not one person talked about what happened to them. They would always say, so did I tell you what I'm doing now? Did I share what I'm doing now? Can I tell you what I'm doing now? I mean, it was like, and I never thought about that. But after I evaluated the post interview and debriefed with some other people, I went, wow, it's weird. None of them talked about what happened to them. They were only talking about what's happening with them now, plans they have for the future, where they want to go. And I went, wow, that was a really interesting insight.
yes. Excuse me. That is very interesting. And that information is in your first book with
So
those people,
that
that you
is my
spoke
first
to.
book, is Turning Tragedy into Triumph. And that's my first book, and it profiles that. And then again, I do use some amazing stories in my second book that profile, in my genetics chapter, in my gratitude chapter. I mean, it's really, the stories are the things I love the most. Stories tell the story. It's really
Right,
awesome.
right. Yeah, definitely fascinating. And where can everyone find your books?
So you can find my book on, it's Post Hill Press is my publisher.
Okay.
And you can obviously find it on any place you look for books, to get books. And then also, I'd love people, if they want more information to follow me on Instagram at JMF. And then also my website, dr.jmf. com is my website. But yes, so anatomy, both my books can be, Post Heel Press is Anatomy of a Survivor. Very thankful to them for giving me that opportunity to publish with them. And then Turning Tragedy into Triumph, both of them can be found on Amazon as well.
Wonderful. And we can add those links also
Okay,
to make
perfect.
it easy for everyone that is watching with us
Perfect.
right now. And Lisa said, I always like to hear what people went through. I did my share of CPR and took care of many, many people
No,
on ventilators. Oh, God bless you, Lisa. And she also said, your book sounds very interesting. So yes, we are going to post the links where Dr. Joyce Mikal-Flynn's books can be found. And that way, because I mean, it's such, your story, you are such a fascinating person. And what happened to you is incredibly interesting. And your books deal with what happened and stories of other people, but also to help recover,
yes,
correct? Like
yes,
things that can be done to help people
yes,
that have gone through
yes.
traumatic and life-changing experiences. So if there was anything for you to tell people out there who have gone through situations or who may be going through a situation right now, what would that be? What could you share about life or anything?
About life or anything is a wide open thing.
It's a broad spectrum.
I think more, a lot of what I really want people to recognize, and this is what I tell my students sometimes when they're going through, but I go, you got this. You really do. You're way stronger than you are giving yourself credit for. Sometimes I think than society gives us credit for. We
Mm,
are surviving machines. We are built to do that. But not only can you survive, once you hit that level of survival, then you can really move into profound growth and development and really recognize what not only you went through, but what you were able to do and how you were able to accomplish, and how what you went through informs you in your future life of saying, yeah, things are bad, but man, I remember going through this and I got through that. I can get through this. So I think for me, the biggest message that I like to give is to people is like, we need to recognize what it is you can do. And my system of metahab or metahabilitation is a system, is a pathway to guide you through that. I always like to tell people, especially at the beginning, this is a pathway. This takes time. This does not, what I was able to accomplish did not happen overnight. It happened over time. And so when things happen acutely, don't look, oh, I wonder if I'll do this in 10 years. No, 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 no. We need to get you through this part, then you go through that part, and then we can move on. So I think recognizing that there is a process and to engage with that, to recognize how incredibly the potential and capacity we have, and to use that. And then I think, the other part of that is to just recognize that we have this to share with each other. We
yes,
have this to share with each other. And so when you go through your hero's journey, you need to come back and help somebody else with that.
yes. I totally agree with that. And sometimes, would you agree also that it's the initial shock when something happens and it's so unexpected?
Yeah.
I think that maybe that can be the most difficult because just yesterday I was at the grocery store. So today, like, you know what I mean? When things happen so
Mhm,
suddenly and
mhm.
so unexpected because you didn't have any prior issues, right? What
Right,
happened,
right.
you didn't expect it. And let me just ask you this also. Is there anything that happened medically since the situation that you need to maybe get checked regularly? Like, do you go for regular checkups for your heart or no?
I just go regular checkups. I haven't
Just
had
your regular
anything that
yearly
happened.
physical.
Yeah. So
So
I've
is it
gone through,
really,
I've
is it
gone through
really
cardiac rehab. I had a cardiologist for a while. I was on some cardiac meds for a little bit, and then, so no, it's been really a long time, but I just go through my regular checkups and take care of myself and keep myself. The other thing too is that with even what we're going through now and everything, I go, you need to really focus on keeping yourself as healthy and well as you possibly can. So when you get an intrusion or an interruption or whatever, you're able to handle that. So it's very important for me to keep myself as healthy as I can. That goes with also the notion of dealing with challenges and traumas. So when you have adversities or little challenges or annoyances or all those kinds of things, recognize those as the weightlifting to hit for to make sure that you got those in check so that you can handle the big ones. Those challenges, adversities, annoyances, and all those, that's the training ground. When you're good at handling those, then when you get hit with a big thing, you've got your system in place where it may get knocked down for a bit, but it will come back.
Wow, so interesting. In your books, I know that they are super interesting. So please, again, just tell us the titles of your books.
So first book, Turning Tragedy into Triumph. And my second book is Anatomy of a Survivor, Building
Wonderful.
Resilience, Grit, and Growth After Trauma.
Wonderful.
So,
thank you for that. And we are going to post the links for everyone who is interested to pick up copies of these wonderful books. And I got to say, thank you so much. Like I said earlier, I was so looking forward to talking to you. And so I'm so glad we got to do this. And for the people that are watching and listening, we have Gina. She said she's late, but she's here and she's going to watch the full replay to catch what she missed. And Eileen is with us and she said, great session. And Tears says hello. You are so interesting.
Can you tell also, I want to share with the woman who's the ICU nurse,
Lisa.
tell her, thank you, Lisa, for what you're doing. And I want you to know, when I did get better, I went back to the ICU. And I said, thank you to the people who were working in the ICU and said, here I am. Thank you for all the hard work that you did and helped me in my healing journey. So Lisa, thank you.
Yes, thank you, Lisa. Thank you for everyone who works in the ICU and the medical profession, because without them, I mean, where would we be?
Right.
And we certainly can't do it ourselves.
And I just like, especially Lisa to know, but other people to know that I do a lot of programming for people who work, clinicians, first responders. I do a lot of groups. I do a lot of programming. People hire me to come and do that with their groups. So if you find something that is interesting to you, certainly get in touch with me at JMF at metahab.com. You can put the link out there, but if you know groups that I can be of help to or whatever, please let them know. I'm here to help out.
Wonderful. Thank you. Thank you so much. And thank you for all you do. And thank you for your time today.
All right. And thank you for this opportunity. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I mean, what you know and what you have to share is so important. So it really, really is. And all the information that you have in your book. And I know they're fabulous. So thank you. Thank you for today. Thank you for your time. And I want to thank everyone who joined us. And Lisa also said, thank you so much. And and thank you guys. Thank you for being here with us today. And I am going to post the links, and I guess keep on doing what you're doing. It's fabulous, and it's so important.
As well.
All right. Thank you so much.
Have a good rest of your day. Okay.
Thank you. You too. Take care now. All right. Bye-bye.